Picture this for a second. You're standing on a dusty main street, high noon, hand hovering over your holster. It's tense, it's quiet, and everything hangs on what happens in the next split second. Now, take that image, that raw, visceral tension of the Wild West, and drop it right into the middle of a Monday morning boardroom meeting.
It's a bit of a jarring juxtaposition, isn't it?
It is. But according to the book we're discussing today, maybe it shouldn't be. We are looking at The Gunfighter's Guide to Business by Rich Hoffman. And I have to admit, when I first saw the title, I rolled my eyes a little. I thought, okay, here we go, another macho business metaphor.
Sure, the business as war or business as combat trope is pretty well-worn territory.
Exactly, but then you start digging in and you realize Hoffman isn't just saying, shoot everyone and take the money. He's actually drawing this really specific, almost philosophical parallel between the code of the Western gunfighter and modern corporate strategy. It's surprisingly nuanced.
That's the key word, code. We tend to think of gunfighters, at least the Hollywood version, as these chaotic agents of violence. But Hoffman argues that the successful ones, the ones who survived, operated on a very strict set of principles. Discipline, preparation, awareness. And he thinks those exact same principles are what's missing in a lot of modern leadership.
Right, so let's unpack that, because Hoffman isn't just a writer, he's got a background in sales and consulting, so this is coming from the trenches. What is the core argument here? Is it just about being faster on the draw?
No, and that's the misconception. In fact, one of the big themes in the book is that speed without accuracy is just noise. It's fatal. He talks a lot about the fast draw, but in a business context, the fast draw isn't about rushing a product to market or answering an email in 3 seconds.
Okay, so what is it then?
It's about readiness. It's about having your tools, your skills, your team, your data so organized and internalized that when the opportunity presents itself, you can act immediately and effectively. The gunfighter doesn't clear leather until he has to, but when he does, the motion is fluid. It's practice. There's no hesitation.
That reminds me of that old military saying, slow is smooth, smooth is fast.
Precisely, and Hoffman applies this to things like sales cycles. If you're fumbling with your holster, meaning if you don't know your product inside out or you don't understand your client's pain points before you walk in the room, you're already dead. You just don't know it yet.
That's a terrifying way to look at a sales meeting, but effective. I want to touch on the historical context here, because Hoffman leans heavily on this Western imagery. Is this all just John Wayne nostalgia, or is there real history he's pulling from?
He's definitely tapping into the mythos of the West, but he grounds it in the reality of survival. The American West in the late 19th century was an environment of extreme scarcity and high risk. There was no safety net. If you made a bad decision, you didn't just lose a quarterly bonus, you lost your life for your livelihood. Hoffman suggests the modern business landscape has become similarly unforgiving.
In what way? Because last I checked, if I bought his spreadsheet, no one challenges me to a duel at high noon.
Not physically, no, but look at the speed of disruption today. Companies that were titans 10 years ago are gone today because they were too slow on the draw or they misread the landscape. The stakes of irrelevance are higher and faster than ever. Hoffman argues that the gunfighter mindset is about hyper-awareness of your environment.
He talks about situational awareness, right? Which sounds like something a bodyguard would say.
It is, but think about it in a boardroom. Who is actually making the decision? What is the unspoken tension in the room? What are the competitors doing that isn't in the public reports yet? A gunfighter who walks into a saloon and doesn't check the corners gets shot in the back. A CEO who ignores market trends because they're focused on their vision gets blindsided by a startup.
It's interesting because vision is usually praised. We love the visionary leader, but you're saying Hoffman values observation over vision?
I'd say he values observation as a prerequisite for vision. You can't have a vision for the future if you don't accurately see the present. There's a section where he discusses the idea of the cool hand. It's that ability to remain completely detached and analytical when everything around you is chaos.
That cool hand concept is tough, though, because we're humans. We have emotions. If the stock price tanks or a client screams at you, the biological reaction is panic, fight, or flight. How does he suggest we actually achieve this gunfighter coolness?
Preparation. He's huge on the unglamorous work. We see the duel, the climax. We don't see the hours of cleaning the gun, practicing the draw, studying the terrain. Hoffman emphasizes that confidence comes from competence. You don't panic if you've already mentally rehearsed the worst case scenario.
So it's anti-anxiety through extreme preparation.
Exactly. If you know exactly what your value proposition is and you know exactly what the objections will be, you don't get flustered when a client pushes back. You just handle it, like reloading.
I want to pivot to the cultural impact of this kind of thinking, because there is a criticism to be made here. If we treat business like a gunfight, doesn't that create a toxic culture? If everyone is a gunfighter, aren't we just shooting at each other?
That is the biggest risk with this metaphor, and I think it's where readers need to be careful. If you interpret gunfighter as lone wolf mercenary who cares nothing about the kill, you're going to build a terrible company culture. You'll have a team of backstabbers.
Right, the guy who steals your leads because survival of the fittest, right?
Exactly. But Hoffman does try to steer away from that. He talks about the code of the West, things like loyalty, keeping your word, writing for the brand. In the Old West, reputation was currency. If you were known as a liar or a backshooter, no one would deal with you. You'd be isolated, and isolation meant death.
That's a really crucial distinction. Reputation as a survival mechanism. In the modern world, we might call that brand equity or professional integrity, but it's the same mechanic. If you burn a partner, you might win that one deal, but you've poisoned the well for the next 10.
Yes. The gunfighter metaphor works best when you view it as individual accountability rather than aggression. It's about owning your results. There's no middle management in a duel. You can't blame marketing for not giving you cover fire. It's just you. Hoffman wants people to take that level of extreme ownership over their careers.
Let's look at the technical breakdown of the book's advice. He has these 10 gunfighter rules or principles. Is there one that stood out to you as particularly counterintuitive?
There's an emphasis on don't admire your work.
Don't admire your work? That sounds like the opposite of every LinkedIn post ever written.
It does, doesn't it? But think about the gunfighter context. If you take a shot and then you stand there watching to see how cool it looked or patting yourself on the back, you're distracted. You're vulnerable. In business, this is the company that has one hit product and spends the next 5 years celebrating it while the market moves on.
The resting on your laurels trap. The BlackBerry syndrome.
Right. Hoffman says you take the shot, you assess the result, and you immediately scan for the next threat or opportunity. The celebration is a luxury you can't afford in the heat of the moment. It keeps you hungry.
It's relentless, though. It sounds exhausting.
It is relentless. And frankly, this book isn't for people who want a 9 to 5 where they can coast. It's written for people who view business as a high-stakes arena. Whether that's healthy or not is a different debate. But within the logic of the book, complacency is the enemy.
You know, this reminds me of how sports psychology invaded business in the 90s. Everyone wanted to be the athlete in the boardroom. Now we're seeing the shift to more survivalist metaphors. Do you think that says something about the current economic climate?
I think it absolutely does. The economy feels volatile. Job security isn't what it used to be. The idea of the company man who is taken care of for life is dead. So naturally, a metaphor about a solitary figure surviving by their wits and skills in a lawless land, that resonates. It feels like I can't rely on the town sheriff, I have to rely on my own aim.
That's a profound point. The gig economy, freelancing, the end of pensions, we are all kind of drifting into the Wild West whether we like it or not.
And that's where Hoffman's advice on the brand comes in again. In the book, writing for the brand implies loyalty to your employer, but in a modern reading, you are the brand. Your reputation for delivering, that's your sidearm. That's the only thing you take with you when you leave.
I want to challenge one part of this, though. The gunfighter is inherently a destructive figure. Their tool is a weapon. Business, ideally, is constructive. We're building products, services, solutions. Does the metaphor limit us? Does it stop us from collaborating?
That's the friction point. If you view every negotiation as a shootout where one walks away and the other gets carried out, you're doing business wrong. Most business deals need to be win-win. However, Hoffman would argue that you're not shooting at the client. You're shooting at the problem.
Shoot the problem. Okay, I can buy that.
Right. The enemy isn't the person across the table. The enemy is inefficiency. The enemy is the competitor trying to put you out of business. The enemy is your own lack of discipline. If you direct that killer instinct towards solving the problem faster and better than anyone else, that's productive.
So it's about aggression towards obstacles, not people.
Ideally. Though, let's be honest, in sales, sometimes it really is about beating the other guy. Hoffman doesn't shy away from the competitive aspect. If two vendors are pitching for one contract, only one is walking out with the gold. That is a duel.
And in that duel, what's the biggest mistake Hoffman sees people making? The shooting yourself in the foot moment.
Talking too much. The classic Western hero is the strong silent type for a reason. Hoffman points out that in business, especially sales, people talk themselves out of deals constantly. They oversell. They make promises they can't keep. They fill the silence because they're nervous.
Silence is a weapon.
It is. Silence forces the other person to show their hand. It demonstrates confidence. The gunfighter who is blustering and shouting threats is usually the one who is scared, the one who stands there, hand on their hip, just watching. That's the one you worry about.
That's such a great image. I'm thinking about every meeting I've ever been in where someone just wouldn't stop talking and how weak it made them look.
Exactly. Hoffman advises say what needs to be said, clearly and concisely, and then stop. Let the words land. It's about economy of motion, but applied to communication.
What about the legacy of this book? It's a niche title, clearly. Who is this actually for? Is it just for the alpha male sales bro?
It certainly appeals to that demographic, there's no denying that. But I think dismissing it as just bro-lit is a mistake. It's actually very useful for people who struggle with assertiveness. If you're someone who tends to be passive, who lets things happen to you rather than making them happen, adopting a bit of this gunfighter persona can be really empowering.
Like an alter ego, putting on the hat.
Yes, you don't have to become a jerk, but you can borrow the posture. You can borrow the preparation. You can decide, I'm not going to be a victim of this meeting. I'm going to control the tempo. That's a valuable shift for a lot of people.
It strikes me that a lot of this comes down to accountability. The West was a place of ultimate accountability because there was no bureaucracy to hide behind.
That is the central thesis. In a corporation, it is so easy to hide. You can hide behind committees, email chains, circling back, and synergy. In a gunfight, you can't hide. You either hit the target or you don't. Hoffman is asking us to strip away the corporate camouflage and look at our own performance that starkly.
And that's uncomfortable.
Growth usually is.
So, if we were to boil this down for our listener who isn't going to read the whole book, but wants the takeaway, they're walking into work tomorrow. What is the one gunfighter move they should make?
I'd say, check your weapons. Before you start your day, look at your calendar. Look at your tasks. Do you actually have the ammo, the data, the skills, the preparation to win those interactions? Or are you just walking out onto the street hoping for the best? Stop hoping. Start preparing.
I love that. Stop hoping. It's simple, brutal, and effective. It makes me think about how much of our work lives are spent on autopilot. We just assume the day will happen to us.
And Hoffman says, make the day happen for you. Be the one who draws first. Not in terms of aggression, but in terms of setting the agenda. If you don't set the agenda, someone else will set it for you. And you probably won't like where it leads.
It's a powerful call to action, whether you like the cowboy aesthetic or not. The underlying message of extreme self-reliance and preparation is hard to argue with. Rich Hoffman gives us a lens to see our sterile offices as a frontier. And on the frontier, you have to be awake.
And you have to be ready.
Exactly. We've covered the code, the preparation, the silence, and the survival. It's a lot to chew on. If you found this useful, maybe send this episode to that colleague who always talks too much in meetings. They might need the hint about the silent type. Thanks for listening.